Welcome back to Rose-Hulman's iPhone SDK programming. We're going to start up a new topic today, so that's actually pretty sweet. The new topic that we're going to start up is going to be managing multiple views. So I went through and I went ahead and color-coded things based on what they're going to be called. Managing multiple views, you can also call it view controller controllers. Is going to be a big focus towards the end of the course. This is really extremely important because if you think about apps that we've made in this course so far, they've all been single view things. So like, you open up the tic-tac-toe, it's the same view the whole time. You open up the moving smiles, it's the same view the whole time. If you think about apps used in the store, none of them are that way, right? So we're going to start this section, managing multiple views, with an example called modal view controllers and popovers. So modal view controllers is a system that's used primarily on the iPhone, iPod Touch. You can do it on iPad, but it's mainly for iPhone, iPod Touch to just put up a single view that a user has to interact with. Then once they finish with that, it goes away and then you're back. Popovers are very similar. They're for the iPad, where you put up a view and you have to interact with that view somehow, and then if you click somewhere else, it'll go away. So really, we're starting in on managing multiple views, but we're starting in one step at a time. These two concepts are meant to put up one view that you must interact with, and then when you're done with it, you're back to the other one. So this is kind of the 1 + 1 = 2 simplified version of managing multiple views. Now I say it's the simplified version because the concepts are very easy, but in this example we're actually going to dive into a lot of details just because there are a lot of things about popovers in particular that people find really interesting. And popovers, if you want to program for the iPad, you got to learn popovers, right? So let's go ahead and get started. Let's tell you about the app we're going to make. So the app we're going to make is going to use on the iPad a popover. So this is a popover, and it's going to be an info screen. So it's just going to be some information about your app. We're also going to show you action sheets on the iPad because they look pretty good. So this is actually an action sheet. You can see that it's related pretty heavily to a popover. Underneath the hood it's using a popover, right? But this is actually an action sheet on the iPad. And then we're going to do the same thing on the iPhone. So this is going to be a universal app we're going to make. So we're going to review a lot about making all these connections. That's where we have to start. The actions, by the way, you saw them on the iPad as well, is we're going to be changing the color of the background by clicking on this button. So if I was to click on change color, it would pop up the action sheet. And if I was to click the info, it'll pop up this. The overall approach that we're going to be using is we're going to be showing you concepts of making superclass for all the general things that can be done, and then specific iPad and iPhone subclasses. So really it's an example about modal view controllers and popovers, but really it's a lot more because it's all these other concepts. So we're going to have those three .h.m files, and then we're also going to have the view controllers .h and .m file. And like I say, it's just going to be an about view that we're going to present modally on the iPhone and then popover on the iPad. All right, let's get started. You've heard me talk enough, so I lectured for all of a few minutes there. Go ahead and open up Xcode, do a new project. We're going to start this one with a universal window-based application. I really think that this is the best template for you to start with whenever you're making universal apps, and I think universal apps are really the way to go. It is kind of a pain in the butt because you have to do a lot of connections, but it'll work out fine. Let's go ahead and call this modal views and popovers. I've obviously done it in class as well, so I'm going to have to call mine add the word video. When we open this up, when you use the window-based application, what you get is you get an app delegate. In Xcode 3.2 you get an app delegate for each one. You get a main window for each one. They share an info plist. but you have to do all the wiring yourself. In Xcode 4, I think they're going to give you a super class for the app delegate, which will lower the amount of tedious work. First thing we want to do is we're going to start making some of the files that we're going to put into this. The files that we're going to start with, making a modal pop view controller. I didn't want to type out the whole thing, so I just typed modal pop. And then that one is going to be the super class, so you can see it's in the shared area. And then we're going to make an iPhone subclass of it. So modal pop view controller underscore iPhone.h.m and a zib. And then for the iPad, a .h, a .m, and a zib. So we're going to make these 8 files to start with. So go ahead and follow along. I think it's the best way to learn. The nice thing about videos is you can pause it whenever you need to. So for the iPad, we're going to create 3 new files there. We're going to make a UI view controller targeted for the iPad with the zib file. I'm going to call this one modal pop view controller underscore iPad. iPhone, very similar, except for we do not want to target it for the iPad. So we're going to say modal pop view controller iPhone. And then in the shared area, we're going to make a superclass for the two. So this one's going to be a UI view controller. I'm going to uncheck the zib file construction. And it doesn't really matter if you check on target for the iPad or not, because the only thing that's really different when you don't have a zib is the should auto rotate to interface orientation. On the iPad, it's defaulted to yes. iPhone, it's defaulted to portrait only. But we're going to override those in the subclasses anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But I'm gonna say not targeted for iPad. And this one's going to be just modal pop view controller. Cool, so now we've got our 8 files in that we're going to need. And then what I like to do next, just because it's fun, really, is to do the zib files first. Zib files are kind of the most fun to make because they're graphic. So let's go ahead and make the zib file first. So I went ahead and selected the modal pop view controller iPad zib file. When you pop it up on the screen, you can see it's all geared up for the iPad. Hopefully you've got a little bit more real estate on your screen. First thing I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and change the background color. So I just clicked in this window and then I hit Command 1. And then that pops up the attributes, and I'm going to change the background color. I'm just going to make it yellow. Feel free to make it any color you like. Then I'm going to add some elements from the library. I'm going to add a button. And on this button I'm going to write change background color iPad. Make it a little bigger just for fun. I'm also going to make a button in the corner to launch an info view. I'm going to do something kind of sneaky here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drag one button up into the corner, and then I'm going to drag another button here, and I'm going to say info view dark. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to, as soon as I can get a hold of this thing, I'm going to set it on top of the other button. The reason I do this is because I think these buttons are too small, to be honest. They're 18 pixels wide and 19 pixels tall. I find this hysterical because this is a HIG violation to have something that small. It's funny that Apple can get away with whatever they want. But that button's too darn small. So what I like to do is I like to put another button behind it, and then later I'm going to make this button transparent so you can't see it. So alright, so there we go. This one's set up. We're going to have to come back later to connect it. But let's go ahead and close it down. Let's do the iPhone real quick. iPhone, likewise, we'll give it a color. You can make it the same color if you like. Doesn't matter. I'll make mine a different color. And then I'm going to add the same elements to this. If you add the exact same elements, you can actually use a single zip file. But to be honest, I never know when I start an app if they're going to be exactly the same or not. So I always end up making two. And then sometimes it turns out to be a waste of my time because I made two identical files. But it still is rather easy. Oh, another thing I forgot to do last time is we're also going to be talking about rotations in this app. So I want to make sure to set all my struts right. So I'm going to have to go back to the other one and fix this. But this button right here, I just want it to float in the middle. So if you want something to float in the middle, you say go ahead and lock it to the top when we rotate, but don't lock to either side, and you can see it'll float in the middle. This guy, I want to lock him into the upper left, or sorry, upper right, and then the same with this little I button here. We're going to lock him in the upper right. So there are three different buttons here, and they're going to behave separately in how they rotate. iPhone, we're going to eventually support rotations on. Let's go back and fix the iPad. So this guy, I want him just to float in the middle. This one, upper right. And then the info button will also be in the upper right. So preparing the struts for rotation, we've got the iPad zib and then also the iPhone zib. The next thing that's coming is the connections to make this thing actually show up on the screen. We've done this from day one. We've done this a ton, but it still takes so much practice. The best way to do it is for you to just go ahead and try to do it now on your own. And then whenever I go through it, you can check to make sure that yours is all there. So take a minute and see if you can do this on your own. I've given you an outline for the things you need to do. Alright, so hopefully you've had a chance to pause it and try to do this yourself. I'm going to go ahead and go through it here. Just going to go through it line by line. The first thing I need to do is I need to make the iPhone and iPad view controllers actually be subclasses. At present, they are not subclasses. They're just independent. So if I want to make something a subclass, I do an import on the superclass, and I say that you are a subclass of this. And so I did that for the iPhone there, and then for the iPad, I import it, and I say you are a subclass of this one. Great, so check mark on number one. Number two, make IVARs with IB outlets for the root view controller and both app delegates. So it's kind of a shame that you have to do it in both places, but it's going to work out just fine. So we're going to make a subclass, or sorry, an IVAR for the subclass. It turns out that if you wanted to, you could make the IVAR be the superclass, because a pointer to the superclass can point to an object that's a subclass. That's totally legal. But in this case, there's no reason to do that. And also, it'll make sure that we don't ever have to do any typecasting. So the one here is just a pointer, and it actually could have been either. When we actually alloc it, then it's important that you do the right one. So I went ahead and set up the iPads real quick. Let's go ahead and set up the iPhones as well. So Modal view controller, iPhone. And then I'm going to go ahead and call this one root view controller as well. And then I made it an outlet. So you can see that these tasks are extremely similar on the iPhone and the iPad. So now we've got a pointer that we're going to use. And then let's go ahead and finish with the code. So we're going to add the root view controller's view to the window. So this is just a pointer to some object. We better synthesize the property, and we'll be good about our memory management. So anytime you make a property that's retained, you should release it. But then the most important thing here is the window. We need to add the subview. We need to add root view controllers view. So view controllers aren't visible, but their views sure are. And then for the iPhone, we need to do, it's actually the exact same thing here. and so we need to add subview self.rootViewControllerView. Oh, and then I should also import. Oh no, I don't need to import it. Yeah, I do. I need to import the Modal ViewPop view controller for the iPhone. If I'd forgotten this one, this is the one I forget the most for some reason, by the way. If I'd forgotten this one, it would have complained whenever I tried to call the view, because it would say, I don't know anything about that. What are you talking about? Oh, I'm in the wrong spot. Let's put it into the app delegate. I am going fast through this, and that's because I wanted you to do it on your own. If I'm going too fast for you to follow along, feel free to pause it. You might have to play a thing again. I did do this kind of fast. I'll try to slow down. So in the iPad, import, add the subview, take care of memory management and the synthesis. iPhone, the import, take care of synthesis, add the subview, and then be a good memory management citizen. Obviously, memory management at this level doesn't matter because this only gets called if the thing is done, right? All right, so we took care of the code step. So we added its view to the window. I could have also written in here that we synthesized it, we imported the header file, we released it, yada yada. So that's all well and good, but we haven't actually created an instance of this class yet. We're going to do that within the zip file. So inside the main window zip file, we're going to actually create an instance. So I'm going to drag over a view controller. I'm going to hit Command 4, and I'm going to say don't create a view controller, create a Modal Pop view controller iPad. So I'm in the iPad window. So I create him, and then I'm going to hold down Control, and I'm going to drag to connect that instance to this pointer. At the first day of class, we also had to set the nib name. That's not necessary here because it will default to the zib with the same name. So yeah, saved one step. Likewise on the iPhone, drag over a view controller, change its class to a Modal Pop iPhone, and then connect it. Again, going very, very fast because this should be like, you should have seen this so many times now, it's boring to you. So let's go ahead and run it and see if we've actually done anything useful. So when you run it, it should look like these two things. Let's see if I've succeeded. So I hit build and run. I didn't even look which one I'm running for. I guess I'm running for the iPhone first. So this one should pop up blue, and it should show me those 3 buttons. Winner, winner, chicken dinner. So mine worked fine and dandy. If you had trouble with yours, go back and try to figure out what is wrong and see if there's a step in the video that can help. For the iPad, we're going to do the same thing. It pops up in yellow, and you can see the 3 buttons there. Cool. So connections, connections, connections. It's a pain, but it really helps you understand like the important concepts of putting up views, because you need to do 2 things. You've got to get the thing into the heap, so you've got to alloc the instance, and then you also in the view hierarchy, you have to say that it's a subview of something that's already in the view hierarchy, and that's how the system knows to draw it, right? So that's what makes it visible. Cool, so this is old stuff, all right? We've done this many, many times. Let's go ahead and add 2 IB actions. So we're going to add an IB action for the color change button and for the info button. Just because we've done this so many times, let's just go ahead and copy paste it. So if you want to open up the slides, it's a fairly easy task to do. You can just click on the day's video lecture. So to paste this in, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it into the superclass so that they've both got a pressed color change button and a pressed info button. And then also into the superclass, I'm going to go ahead and print an NSLog message. And then I'm going to go ahead and do my connections. So since this is in the super classes, both subclasses get it. So if I go into the Modal Pop view controller for the iPad, I should be able to click on a button, and I should be able to control drag from that button to the files owner. So the background one, I'm going to say that's the info button. And the way the book chose to do this is it chose to do it from selecting the touch up inside event. And that's totally fine. I just control drag because I know it's going to give me touch up inside. So you'll notice that I have 3 buttons but only 2 actions. That's because both the one behind the info is going to point to that action, and the little info button is going to point to that action. Now that I've got it connected, I may as well make this guy invisible. He's still there. You can still click him. He's just not visible. And then same thing on the iPhone. Let's go ahead and make these 3 button connections to the 2 IB outlets. So I just control drag and say you're the color changer. Control drag and say you're the info. And control drag and say you are also the info. You can see that they're made by going to the files owner, hitting control 2, and you can see that both of these are connected. Great. So let's go ahead and run it and make sure that things are working. So I bring up my log, that was Command-Shift-R. If I hit color change, you can see it's calling the color change. If I hit the info button, you can see it says info button. If I intentionally click like outside of it, you can see that this also is doing the info button. The one difference is if you hit the info button, you can see it's got this white flare around it. Whereas if you hit outside of it, there is no magic white flare. I assure you that fingers are big enough that most people don't even notice that white flare. I like that Apple does it, but they would much rather have functionality without a white flare than no functionality. So change color, info on the outside. I forgot to make this one transparent. I have to go do that. And click on the button here. And you can see it does a little white flare. It's hard to see on my screen because it's a white button. So I'm going to make mine transparent. I was kind of torn, by the way. I thought about in this example just giving you this as a starting point since we've done it many times. But then I decided practice is really how you cement a concept in your mind. So I decided to go ahead and make you do it again, just because it really helps cement concepts in your mind. The next thing I'm going to do, I should probably type this one, but I'm in a copy-paste mood. I'm going to go ahead and put placeholders in the subclasses. So if you would like, in any subclass, you can choose to override methods in the superclass. What I'm going to do is I'm going to override the pressed color change button, and I'm going to also override the pressed info button. It is important that they have, the exact same names if you're overriding an existing method. And inside each, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to call super. That way, if there's any shared behavior, I can do that. But if there's any specific behavior to the iPhone or iPad, I can do that as well. And the attempt is to give you the best of both worlds with just a little bit of extra wiring. And that's just a placeholder. Anything specific to that device I can do. But it shouldn't change the functionality of what we've got because they're still calling super, right? So they're still calling the super. And you see the style a lot. Everything that overrides a superclass will do the same format. So let's go ahead and start doing stuff. So we've got this connected, check mark, we did that. Let's go ahead and start making a second view controller. So every app we've made so far in this class has had a single view controller in it, every single one. And so this is going to be the first time we're making a second view controller. So we're going to make a second view controller just to be an info view. And if you would like to make your info view look like mine, I've got some images here you can click on. The idea of an info view is typically you would put things like, your company logo and things like that. Well, the company logo that we've got is a Rose-Hulman logo. So I gave you a small version and a large version here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and drag and drop these over. So I'm just going to drag these over to my resources. I forgot there's not a resources thing. I'll put them in other sources. And I'll say copy them over, yes. Another thing, if you're interested, is I've started using these. I don't really like the gray backgrounds that they give you as well. So I made a couple of my own, like just little simple stone backgrounds. If you'd like to use these, you can. So there's actually 4 of them for all the different iPhone, iPads. For this app, we only actually need iPhone Portrait, but I went ahead and stuck them all in a zip just because they can be handy. Can I drag it right onto there? No, apparently not. So where'd that go? Alright, I found it again. So take this guy and drag him over to... I say take him and drag him over here. Maybe dragging wasn't the easiest approach after all. And then I'll say yes, copy him in as well. You don't have to have these images. I'm not that worried about it. Oh, could not be saved. Cool. So I should be all set there. So let's go ahead and let's make a new file. This one's going to be shared. And this new file is going to be a UI view controller. I am going to make a zib with it. I'm going to go ahead and say that it's targeted for the iPhone, even though we're going to use it in both. So I'm going to say it's got a zib. And this one I'm going to call info view controller. And it's going to be simple enough that we're just going to have just one of them. So let's go ahead and make the zib file for this guy. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just add a few, simple things. So I'm going to go ahead and add a UI image. You can see that the first UI image automatically wants to fill the whole space. And that's perfect. That's just what I wanted. And that's going to be my background portrait. Not only does it fill the space, but it automatically stretches. So it's just going to be the background. And then for what I'm going to do, I've chose to add a company logo in, or in this case, I'll just add a little rosy logo. And you can pick whatever format you think is good. But the idea of info screens is they just say, made by, and then you can put your name on here. I'll say David Fisher. And usually what people do in their info screens is they try to advertise their other apps and say things like, let's stick in a text view, if you like this app, try our other app called, and you can actually put links in and all sorts of stuff. Feel free to go nuts with yours if you so desire, or feel free to make it extremely simple. Doesn't really matter. Oh, another little trick that I think is kind of fun is you can show web views as well very easily. Showing web views isn't difficult, but an even easier thing is just to make it open a website. So for this class, I might send people to our website programming. And it's kind of fun to be able to send them to your website. If you make it custom, it'll kind of look like a web URL, which is great. The other thing that we'd need to do here is we'd need to, sorry, just couldn't resist. We need a way to dismiss this thing. So a way we could dismiss this thing is we could put a button on here that says done. What I'm going to choose to do is I'm going to choose to go ahead and put a toolbar at the bottom, just for the purposes of having a done bar button item. So if you switch it to say done, used to change the text to say done automatically, but now I had to type it, not sure why. And then just because I'm picky, I'm going to have it be over on the right. Great, so there we've got, some type of little info view. It's got a UI button and then also a bar button item on it. I'm going to save it, and then I'm going to go make these call some action. So the action I'm going to have them call, again, we've just done this many times, so I'm going to copy paste it, is I'm going to make them call pressed web URL and a press done button. Once I've added them in the .h file, I can go ahead and make their connections at that point. So I'm going to control drag from the button and say that's the pressed web URL. And then this bar button item is going to call the press done button. You'll notice that the bar button items are different than UI buttons. Bar buttons have only one thing that they might call, whereas UI buttons have all kinds of them. Cool, so we've got him connected, just 2 IB actions, that's the only thing you need to do. To implement the IB actions, getting happy-go-lucky with my copy-paste, we're going to do something you've seen, haven't seen before, and that is we're going to open up a URL. Opening URLs is much more than just opening websites. You can use it to open websites, but this is actually a way you can launch another application from your application. Open URL is a command that's implemented on a UI application object. So you want to get the shared application, and you say open URL, and then depending on what type of NSURL object you have, will determine what app it uses to open it. You can actually call a phone number, so you can say phone : and then give it a number. You can send text messages by saying like SMS : or if you just want to open Safari, you can just give it a website. So if I do this, it'll open the website. We can't test it just yet because it's not going to be visible. I mean, you can run it and you can click on info, but it doesn't pop up yet. We will test it as soon as we can make it visible, but it's not visible yet. Right now we only have the one view controller on there. We're going to make it visible, and that's going to be the end of today's lecture. Don't worry, we'll come back for more. So what we want to do is we want to add the info view when somebody presses the info button. So there are 2 steps. We have to create an instance, get it into the heap, and then we're also going to have to put its view as a subview of something that's in the view hierarchy. I'll start typing because I'm getting too lazy. So to create the view, to allocate, that's going to be the same in both. So we're going to put the code for that into the super view. So when somebody presses the info button, what we're going to do is we're going to lazy load an info view controller. Lazy loading is a big part of app development, so we're not going to, when the program starts up, we're not going to create everything we need. We're just going to make it when we need it, because they might never click the info button. To lazy load something, one of the easiest ways to do it is to create an iVar. So I'm going to make an iVar called info view controller. Whenever I only have one of something, it's pretty common for me just to make it the lowercase version. If I'm going to make an iVar of that type, I'm going to need to say class. This is just a lightweight way to do an import because it doesn't really import any code. It just says, hey, compiler, don't complain. There's going to be a class called this. Go ahead and make a property for it. I'm going to go ahead and use a retain. Since I used a retain, I'm going to have to, of course, synthesize it no matter what. And then because I use retain, I'm going to have to release it. And then since this is a view controller, there's that additional step of if this view becomes unloaded, we should release it in that situation as well. That won't come up, but it's good practice. And then to lazy load it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say if self.infoViewController is nil. So if it doesn't exist yet, then make one. So I'm going to say infoViewController, and whenever I type the class for the first time, that reminds me I've got to import it. So ibars is stuff you've seen before. Lazy loading is something you've seen in the book. Going to use the book strategy for memory management, and that is we're going to make one, and then we'll assign it. So we're going to say alloc, and then we're going to say init. There are a bunch of options for making view controllers. The main one is this, init with nib name in bundle. That one works just fine, but it turns out if the nib that you want has the same name as the view controller, you can just use plain old init, and it'll pick the others as defaults just the way you want them. So I'm just going to use init because it does have the same name as its zib. So the zib and the .h are the same file, and the .m, of course. Cool. So once I make it, I'm going to say self.info save, so my code completion will help me. Info view controller is equal to new info view controller, and then I'm going to release the old one. So retain count is at 1. When I assign it here, retain count is up to 2. Then I release it, and the retain count is back to 1. So the two steps are, put it on the heap and make its view visible. Putting it on the heap is the same in both, so we did it in the super. Now making it visible is specific. So the iPhone is going to be a modal view controller, and the iPad is going to be a popover. So inside the iPhone's version, we're going to say present view as a modal view controller. Modal view. So we're going to present the view this way. Presenting a view modally. This is the first time we've done this, so let's go ahead and look up help first. So if we were to look up help on a UI view controller, there's a section in the task area about presenting modal views. So this is the first time we've seen it, so let's look at some of these functions. It looks like there are 4 things specific to presenting modal views. There is present modal view controller, and then whether it's animated or not. There is dismiss modal view controller, and whether it's animated or not. Those should be pretty obvious about what these are going to do. And then there's 2 other interesting ones. There's the transition style and the presentation style, and these are both properties. So the presentation style determines how it's displayed on the screen. So like once it's there, how much space is it taking up? In the iPhone, it's ignored because it's always full screen. And on the iPad, we're going to look at different options. We're going to do that probably tomorrow. And then there's also the transition style, and this affects how it comes into being. And so this one we will change today. There are a couple different transition styles. If you click on this, you can see that it's an enum with 4 different options. We're going to play with all 4. So let's go ahead and let's do this. So we're going to present it as a modal view. The way modal views work is they're actually working with the view controller, and then the view controller will take care of the details. So you actually just say self present modal view controller. The modal view controller we're going to present is the self.info view controller. Again, self is a view controller. He is presenting another view controller. And animated will say yes. So if we do this, it will pop up on the screen. Let's go try it. And let's make sure we're running on the iPhone. Oops, it yelled at me about something. Figured out what it yelled at me about. It yelled at me about the fact that I didn't import this header file. So I need to import the info view controller. To be honest, I kind of cheat sometimes, and instead of doing a class here, I just do the import in the .h file, and then that way, if I had done that, then whenever I import this .h file, it import the other .h file. But this is good. I'll just I'll independently put it in each .m file. Just because I forgot here, I'm going to go ahead and put it in the iPad's.m file now, just so I don't forget, because I'll need it eventually. Build it again, see if my warning goes away. Great. Now what it should do is whenever I hit the info button, it should present that modal view controller. You can try clicking on the done button, but it won't go away, because the only thing the done button does is it just says to do, dismiss modal view controller. However, the web URL thing should work. If you click on it, it should open the web URL. Our class website does not look very good on an iPhone. No special formatting took place here. But you can see it is all there. It looks pretty good on an iPad, but not on an iPhone. So we've actually presented our first ever multi-view app. Pretty exciting, huh? Let's make it look a little better so that we can understand transitions. So the view that's being presented modally can have this modal presentation style and modal transition style. Presentation style is ignored on the iPhone because it's going to always be full screen, so we won't set it. But transition style, we could set it to something. And if we want to go remember what the options were, there were 4 options. Whenever I am presented with something and I am told there's 4 options, I can't help but want to try them all, right? So I'm going to go ahead and comment them out just so I can copy paste them because I got a little too much. So cover vertical is what you just saw. It popped up from the bottom, so it covered the screen vertically. Flip horizontal is kind of a fun one. I used flip horizontal, so flip horizontal looks kind of neat, and you can click done, but it doesn't do anything yet. Cross dissolve, this one's probably the simplest. Cross dissolve is an animation they use in iMovie a lot. It just kind of makes it appear, and if you were to slow it down, you would see how it's appearing. That one's a great one for whenever you want to be non-flashy. So cross dissolve is actually probably the best in a lot of cases because it's not flashy. It's kind of like Word. People get all excited, or like PowerPoint when it first came out. Everybody used these crazy animations, and then after a while they got simpler ones. This one's pretty flashy. It's a partial curl, so you know you can click done and it would come down. And so all of these are pretty neat. Which one do I feel like today? I actually kind of feel like cover vertical. It's the default, and it's kind of the one people expect to see. So you can use any one you like, but let's go ahead and we'll stick with the default in the end. And so that's just a real simple pop-up from the bottom, and that's kind of the one people expect. Cool. So done a lot of good stuff. We've presented it modally. We understand the options for presenting something modally, all the different animations we can use, and we've got our first multi-view view controller based app. Just to kind of steal a trick from TV, we'll leave you with a cliffhanger today. Once you put up this modal view controller, it's stuck. So we'll go ahead and stop here, and maybe this will motivate you to come see some more. This is kind of the modal view controller side. Next video, we're going to start talking about popovers some more. We're also going to talk about rotations. So you can see that the popover here doesn't rotate. But we want to start supporting rotation. So we'll go pick up those things next time when we get back. Great. So we'll see you next time.